So that was the origin of this SDGs, all where it came about. And today, September 2020, is exactly 5 years from when all those world leaders decided on this SDG direction and journey. So, and there are 17 goals for this SDG. The first one is no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitization, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth. And the last few is industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduce inequality, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace and justice, strong institutions, and finally, partnership to achieve the goals. Now, in Malaysia, we need the partnership of everyone to make this a success. We need the governments, we need the business sectors, we need communities, and we need individuals. All of us have to play together to make this a success. City leaders is not just some or one individuals, it's the whole partnership of everyone. All four plays an important role. And as we come to our level in our country, we have to localize it to our needs. So came out the next step whereby it's localizing SDGs. Now we have the 17 goals, now we're going to localize it to the needs of each and every towns and countries. So the city leaders comprise of everyone, not just the leaders, but each and every one of us. We comprise these city leaders. It's not individuals only. Now, when we come to localizing these things, what we gathered in the urban lab that day was that we have a few things that may hinder us or may assist us in the long run. One of it is multi-level governance. We all know that Malaysia has multi-level governance. We are not a communist-run country whereby the government says everything and everything goes. We have parliament, we have state governments, we have local authorities, and we have JKKs and so forth. And we also have to make sure that this urban lab, whatever we doing during this urban lab, it must incorporate every level of experience and must make it into a national policy. And these policies that we're going to make must be able to localize to the needs of everyone, whether in the cities, in the towns, or in the rural areas. We need to make it happen according to the needs. And it must be practical. It cannot be, we want to do something, but it's not practical at all. We can't follow like Krakow. Few days ago, I was told that Krakow had 800 years of experience to reach where they are today. And Shah Alam, from town council to city status to today, only 42 years. We still have 800 years of experience to learn before we can implement this. No, we don't have. It has to be practical. So whatever Krakow took 800 years to learn, we have to do it in less than 10 years because all this is supposed to be done by 2030, the objective. And then the only way we can go forward is sharing of information of successes. Meaning, if other nations have had successes, if other countries or other cities have had successes, we learn from them. We share information and partner with them. That's why we have this partnership with all the countries, and we have to identify gaps. Malaysia may have gaps other countries may not have. Malaysia may have gaps that only specifically to Malaysia, or certain towns. A town in Jelly, Kelantan may not have the problems that KL City face. So we have to identify the gaps and fill in the gaps accordingly. So we have this national level. The problems with national, our multi-level governance is that national level, they may implement the policies, but state level and local level may not understand the policies by the national level, at the national level. Or they will do things differently, or the local council may have guidelines, implement bylaws that defeats the purpose of the policies. And that's why sometimes it doesn't run concurrently. These are some of the issues that we may face in multi-level governance. So national policies have to be nationwide and also understand the needs of locals, the localized situation. Now, this is a view of KL. You can see that the people here are hectic, fast, everything is fast here. We have jams, we have problems that towns may not have. And in small towns, their problems are so much different. They may have cramped up living space. They may have children who have gone out. All the people there are elderlies. The elderlies are in the small towns. The youngs have moved to the cities. So their problems they face are totally different from what the cities face. And we have the rural and extra rural, like in Sarawak. If you were to go to Sarawak, there are still people living in long houses, rumah panjangs. I was there working in the town called Kapit for 6 months. Kapit is like you take a flight to Cebu, and then you take a 4-hour boat ride to Kapit. And life there is totally different from the city. And when we do policies, we have to think of how it affects everyone in the long term. So our policies may work for us here, but it may not work for a person in the town of Kapit, Sarawak. And when we do all this, we have to be practical. When I say practical, is we need numbers. How many people, how many percent, who is there. But all these numbers must be practical. Numbers should not be the goals themselves, but it's a tool. Why I say that is because when you use numbers, example, you have 2 trees. If I were to say, I want 50% of the trees cut in your country, I only have 2 trees. If I cut 50%, I only have 1 tree left. So numbers play a game. It may be practical for one country, and we need the data and the numbers, but we have to look at the practicality of it. And if I have 1,100 trees, and you allow me to cut 1,000 trees, I only have 2 trees. And you said, oh, you can cut 1,000 trees, I only left 100 trees. So you have to look at the practicality. Numbers play an important information, but yet it may not be practical for different situations. So when we use numbers, must be very careful. When we share information, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. We lack something, we fill in the gaps from different countries. Every one of us play a part. When we share information, things work better. That's why we are here today. All of you have information I may not have. All of you have information that others may not have. So when we come together, we see this for this country, we are moving forward with all the information that we gather together. And when we gather together, we are interconnected. This is what will happen. We are all gathering information and we are passing the information, and even though we are in our own clusters, in our own towns, but we are building up together at the same time. So must be practical. Next slide. Okay. We have to identify and bridge gaps. When I say this, it's because small towns may have the gaps that we cannot identify unless we work with the people there. We have to make city leaders of everyone, meaning even though they are not from the city, maybe they have ideas that can bridge the gaps that we may have here. 5 of the main challenges that was written and shared out to the UN was lack of good data leaves us in the dark. Meaning, if LPPKN has a lot of data, but we don't get that data, we cannot do work. So we have to share. So lack of good data. Sometimes some people have the good data, but they don't share it out. So we are in the dark. What do we do? What we do next? Where do we get this information? So sharing is important. And we cannot concentrate all the goals within the 17 SDGs. There are 169 goals there, targets there. So we have to choose what is adaptable to our country. So we have to be more specific on certain areas. And all this needs financing. A lot of the things that we're going to raise up will need money, will need finances, and need a lot of building up infrastructures. So our ambitions, what we want here today, our goal, also have to go along with our finance. It has to be practical. The local government, complex issues, because like I said just now, local governments may have different problems faced in cities, and leadership from cities. Some mayors who have the hindsight and who have the view or the passion to make their city better can have a result 100 years from today. They can have results. So if you have a city mayor, a leadership from the cities themselves who is far-sighted, you can have a better governance. I give an example. New York, 150 years ago, when they decided to make the park, the New York park, who would have thought that the city is surrounded by a big, huge park? The park is surrounded by the huge, big city. You see? They had a sustainable development way back then, because one mayor or one person back then thought of this 100 years ahead. Today, they are enjoying that city park within New York City because of someone's foresightedness, and not just everything buildings only. So, to end that 9 hours to 10 minutes, I have to share this, that all this, what we need is to create awareness. Without awareness, a lot of people are still in the dark. I believe half of the population have not heard of SDGs, or are not in line with our national direction of making our cities sustainable, with sustainable development, and can sustain in the long run. So awareness is important, awareness at all levels. And our opinion, not mine, our opinion is that to create awareness, you may have to need short adverts, short advertisements, short blasting of, like how we do in COVID. We tell don't wear mask, must have social distancing, cannot, you do not wear mask, you cannot enter a place. We have all this, so it become an awareness that everyone knows. You don't wear a mask, you may get a fine. You cannot enter without scanning. So the same thing with these SDGs, we need to create awareness so that everyone in this country is aligned. Then it can be practical to implement. That is the gist of what we learned during the urban lab. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Darren. So everything can condense in one slide. In 3 hours can present in 10 minutes the contents of the gist of our discussion. Now I'd like to call upon our Miss Moderator, Ms. Yapeng, to come to start the moderate the session. Please.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Is there any way we can reduce this hiss on all the mics? I think the volume is too high. Sorry, I'm wearing my production management hat. Yeah, because then I think it helps to elevate the quality of experience for everyone in the room as well as those in the digital sphere. Hello, everybody who's watching from wherever you are. You could be good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's a borderless world. Thank you so much for coming. Without further ado, we really learned a lot from Darren's presentation. I'd like to give Darren the first seat, if you could just join us. And I'll ask you more questions so that you feel a bit better condensing, that 9 hours into 10 minutes. The next is someone that I admire. He's the president of PAN, Persatuan Arkitek Malaysia, Yang Bahagia Dato' Aizumi. Would you like to take the seat, please? And this other person, so I used to be his driver, driving him around KL, and he used to drive me in Penang. He's also my ex-boss from Think City. There's none other than Encik Hamdan Abdul Majid. We also like to, actually it's a great honor to have someone representing the youth. So we have two people on the panel today. Darren is one of them, but we also have, Nizam Samsudin from the Youth Garage. Adapt Youth Garage. And please, I think if you can sit here so we can put the lady in the middle, right? So yes. And also we then have Omna Serini Ong, who is the head of Engenda, founder and managing director of Engenda Consultancy. And last but not least, we have a discussant, and he is from IIUM. That's none other than Associate Professor Dr. Zainal Abidin. Sila? Okay, I can now take a seat with my... So I think Darren started the conversation very well, but I'd just like to read out some of the thoughts about SDG and localizing SDGs. I did a poll, a very quick dip poll, to ask people around the world, placemakers, what they thought of SDGs. So I'm just going to read out a quick summary. So Darren gave us the local problems. And so we have one comment from one of the European leaders of Placemaking Europe, Charlotte Sands, and she says that, I think we have a template, but what can we do differently now? That will have an impact 5 to 10 years. So Darren was talking about 100 years. I think, everything's so accelerated that you now need to look at 5 to 10 years. If you talk to the Zs, you ask them what they want to do in 2 years' time, they're like, I don't know, I'm a YOLO generation. I live for now. The present is a gift. So there's all of these buzz phrases. So they say the risk for many organizations, they are thus abstract, integrated, and exhaustive, that it is hard to prioritize and get started. So one of her colleagues, Herman Wieder, is a visual strategist and is currently working on a serious game that helps teams understand, prioritize, imagine, and translate the SDGs into action for their organizations. So a lot of times what you find is we need vision, but they're so visionary that the person on ground doesn't understand how to implement that vision. And you find that in organizations as well. So in organizations where you have great leaders who are visionary, who set the North Star, and then you come down to the executives and the non-executives, and they have no idea what's going on. They will just say, "Buat kerja sajalah." If I'm told, I will just do. But when you ask them deeper to think why are they doing it, a lot of them just don't understand the real reason why they're doing it. So I think that, and something that Professor here, Associate Professor, can talk about is the quality of our education. So we look at implementation as the biggest problem. So I'm posting a series of questions, and maybe I'm seeding some comments that I will invite the panel to discuss about, right? So this one is from Ryan Smola, who heads the placemaking division in California. He goes, we've never heard of SDGs before he came to Kuala Lumpur for Placemaker Week, ASEAN sponsored by, led by Think City. So this is a community leader and a city leader who's never heard of SDGs. He's from America. And we have also one of the leaders of ISOCARP, Milenia Ivkovic, who says we need to look closer at SDGs now in the context of pandemic threats, recoveries, and future realities. It's a chance to focus and look further than most popular. Yeah, so obviously sometimes, there's a lot of stress at work. There's a lot of to-dos. Yeah, I was just led by a volunteer up here who's a town planner who said to me, I'm doing this volunteer job because it gives me time away from the stress at work. So be careful about having too many things, too many objectives. I believe you can only do 3 in a year very well. So Milena says, please look at your real
objectives that will really resonate and impact. So when we talk about impact, we've been told impact is 5 years and above. A lot of times we do a lot of 1 year, 2 year outputs, yeah, that have some measure of outcome at best, but really when you look at the impact, it's not really there. Because, you know, well, again, the multi-tier system of government, every 5 years there's an election, right? So what do politicians set? 3-year goals, 3-year targets, so that when I'm ready to canvass for the next election, I want to say all of this has been done, but I think as Rakyat, we really need to ask, so what? But what is the impact? What is the impact that my children will see and my children's children will inherit? So those are some of the questions. So I think I have kind of given a broad view. Also, sorry, there's one more from Hong Kong. So Hong Kong says, random street interview with Gen Zs, almost never heard of SDGs. So you know, Malaysia is not that different from the world. And we have Esther van Stekelenburg. He says that it's actually the new urban agendas that resonate more with her than anything else than the SDGs. So it's about, again, prioritization. So with that, I'm going to throw it out and, you know, I'm not going to do the take turns thing. If anybody would like to comment on the overview of FDGs vis-a-vis what they do and what they experience, that'd be great. And when you start, maybe you can preface about what is it that you do, because I think I'm going to not practice the reading out the bio, which kind of, you know, it's a bit long and it's impersonal when I read it. I think it's better coming from you. So who'd like to start? Yeah.
Maybe
Ladies first. Ladies first. Why not? Why not take that gender thing? Yes.
So tell us your question again.
So so we've just said that, you know, there are people out there who are saying in Hong Kong, in Europe, and as a representative for ISOCARP, which is an international architecture and planning organization, they're saying prioritize. They're saying, you know, people don't understand what SDGs are. They're mired in, I mean, it's too confusing, too many things. So from your perspective, if you could just first introduce what is it that Engender does and how SDGs affect you and how are you actually practicing SDGs, followed by, you know, what are some of the issues that you're experiencing?
So can you hear me? Is the mic on?
No, the mic's not on. I think you just press the button.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. So my name is Omna Srini Ong, and I'm the founder and managing director of Engender Consultancy. And as the name implies, we focus on advancing the process towards gender equality. And in ways in which we collaborate, work with grassroots, work with organizations. So collaboration is really the name of the game. And work with government, influence policies, and shift the needle towards gender equality. I wear a number of hats. I'm also on the National Steering Committee for SDGs in the country. I'm also with the Sustainable Development Goals CSO Alliance. So in terms of, I think this question of what is the SDGs and why people don't know about it, I think it's a lot got to do with, it's got to do with what Darren also said, how much are we putting out there, right? And people may also think it's a label. But I think if we put it in the context of what we already know, the Sustainable Development Goals, it started off in 2013 when the UN conducted the largest global conversation ever had, where they engaged 4.5 million people to just answer what question? What kind of a world do you want? And that started the ball rolling, and never before have the person on the street been asked that question. What kind of a world do you want? I think some of us participated in those global conversations, and this is during the post-2015 dialogues. And what came out of there, actually I have them on my slides. I don't think we're going to be using our slides today, are we? Yeah? If someone can pull out my slides just very quickly, then I'll just bring that on as well. Might as well, right? Yes. Since I slept at 1, I mean, preparing
to do it,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, absolutely. Yeah, okay, all right. It's a bit slow, okay. You got it? Okay, so it's a bit slow. This way, where do I point?
You point there, that's where the computer is.
Okay, good. So interesting, I know you can't really see very clearly, but during these consultations, where they asked that one question, the world we want, look at the issues in 2013. It talked about good education, better health care, job opportunities. Don't look at the order as much, huh? Talked about governance, talked about access. Do you think those issues are outdated? No, these issues are still there, and that means we are maybe trying to do the same thing and expecting a different result, and I think that's one of the problems. So I just wanted to point to the fact that the issues are still the same, and this pause that we have, that the pandemic has thrown upon us, and it's a global phenomenon, as we know. Why? We don't ask that question right now. Why is it happening and why is it a global phenomenon? But it is now exacerbating what we already had. So issues that we were blind towards, and I come from a gender perspective, so if gender equality was something that was not considered, gender discrimination, lack of access for women, domestic violence, not domestic violence, gender-based violence has all come to the fore. It's not new. It's not something that's as a result of the pandemic, but as the pandemic somehow brought it to the fore. I feel that needs to be an eye-opener for not only policymakers, but everyone. Right, so the world starts at the end, the start of our journey, the words are missing there, starts of our journey towards 2030. And this was what, Darren mentioned this, that we have to look at this global framework for action, which is what the SDGs are. And it's based on the consultations that they had globally. So that's got to mean something in terms of this is our collective journey towards 2030, right? And how, I'm just going to reiterate, I also come from an educational background, so I know that you have to say it again and again, right? Can I go back to, all right. That this is from the document itself, the Agenda 2030 document, that says that millions have been already engaged with and will own this agenda, that it is the agenda of the people, by the people, for the people. And this, we believe, will ensure its success, and it brings all actors in society together to mobilize all available resources. So it is really written in the language of a framework for action, right? And one thing that we've clearly learned now, I think in many of our reflections, and again, the pandemic strangely makes us reflect on this. Government cannot do it alone. Even in the responses towards the pandemic, even in Malaysia, we knew that the government couldn't reach everyone. Why? Because civil society was actually the real touch points at the grassroots. It was a civil society who was reaching the people who were unreachable, right? So we definitely need a whole of society approach, something that was told to us in 2015, 5 years ago, right? And now we say, hey, that's true. Right? Now let's go to the urban, can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, okay. It seems to be taking a life of its own. Why is someone clicking on that side? Don't click it yet, yeah? Nice. This one? Oh, okay, okay. Oh, really? Yeah. Seriously? Someone was moving it. Okay, so it requires a whole of society approach, again, to end poverty, fight inequality, stop climate change, all the major issues, right? But to build an inclusive, sustainable, resilient future for people and planet, which is really the core issues even for this panel, right? So what's the population, urban population in Malaysia? And this is something, again, similar to other countries. 76% of our population are urban-centric. So, and with the rural-urban migration, we can see the numbers even growing unless we do something about it. So that is something of concern as well, which people are gravitating to smaller spaces and all the social economic problems that come with it. But one thing that, and I'm sure I'm throwing here strategies of the SDGs that I think need to be something that we need to instill in the way we do what we do. And this is not a slogan. I think this is something that we need to put into practice and ask ourselves every time we create a policy or develop a program. Who is being left behind? That's a question we need to ask. And the way in which a strategy to approach that is to reach the furthest first.
I think also, can I just comment? It's not just leave no one behind, leave nothing behind.
Yes.
Because we are, by prioritizing human needs, we have forgotten about the planet. And so you have, life underwater, the SDG.
Absolutely.
So I think that, we need to start thinking it's not about the human experience, it's about the planet experience.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and so I think it's about asking the questions rather than making the statement. I think in our policy making and program development, this is what we need to keep asking. In response to that, what do? So he told me don't say too much. He wants to share more, Zaina. But what I do is also I'm the lead coordinator for the projects of the all-party parliamentary group for the SDGs. I'm the lead coordinator for Bandar Kuching and Batang Sadong, and it's truly a blessing to work in that area. And the program that we're doing is the Slum Incubator Program. And I just wanted to take you through the process, right? And then I'll pass it on to the others. Okay, you can't see very well somehow. Well, it began with a parliamentary constituency visit. Okay, I let Zainal talk about the larger picture of this whole nationwide project, but it begins with a parliamentary constituency visit where we have meet the stakeholders, the government stakeholders, civil society stakeholders, and then we identify exactly who are the furthest who are left behind. And in doing that, actually I can't even see my slide very well.
It's clear.
Where? Can I? Do you mind if I stand then? Okay, I prefer to stand. Okay, perfect. All right, so so in doing that, we identify the furthest behind by having conversations with the community. So we went down to some of the slum areas. And this particular slum area that I'd like to talk about today is a slum area which is located, where homes are located above the graves. I don't know whether you've heard of Kampong Chawan in Sarawak and Kuching, right? And so this was me and the Member of Parliament meeting with the people there. And we had the conversations with the community, asked them whether they would like us to do a program there. We identified the community collaborators, and it's very interesting. Among all the 63 households there, do you know who came forward to become collaborators? I'm pleased to say 5 women, those 5 women. Right, they rose up and said they will do it, right? And to be on the working committee. And then we did a needs assessment, right, to find out what their issues are, and they went door to door. It's in a very dilapidated state, as slums normally are. Then we took the findings from the needs assessment, and we had the community consultation, and this is really very much bottom-up, community-led, and was by no means a top-down approach. We were saying that one of the indicators of success would be if they don't even remember us, and and they remember the champions within the community. So the community consultation to identify priority issues and solutions, and then you can see that the women are up there putting up, and this is in their very simple homes, putting up the mahjong paper and actually leading the consultations. Right? So The consulting, we will bring up those issues when we bring in the government agencies, and that's going to be on the 19th of October. But that will go on to building capacity, building capabilities in the community, implementation of the project. And I agree with you, yeah, I mean, it's a 1-year project or 6-month project, and you can't possibly measure impact that way. And so we hope to see how this continues. But one of the learnings I wanted to say from this is the recognition of the capacity of the individual to contribute towards their own, taking charge of their own affairs and contributing towards the change, and not sitting down and waiting for government to do it. So, I mean, that's in a snapshot, and I'll continue later.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm going to segue very quickly to the other champion of bottom-up implementation, and that's Think City. So I think, Hamdan, maybe you can just start off with, you know, what has Think City been doing? So this is the community level, and I think Think City has also been in the community level quite a lot in JB, Kuala Lumpur, Heritage Core, and in Penang and Butterworth. So do you want to kind of maybe continue on from there, because it's a nice segue?
If I can, Ping, I just thought I will just reflect on the first question that you had put out earlier. And as part of preparing for this conference, I just reread the declaration in 2015, you know, and it was done on the 70th anniversary of the United Nations, and this year is the 75th anniversary. It's interesting, the context of that declaration, you know, as commitments of governments on behalf of the citizens of every country, and I guess every stakeholder of the planet. They had articulated it in the context of similar to when the declaration, establishment of the United Nations and the Declaration of Human Rights in 1945. The spirit was about setting the world right, accepting the fact that things have gone wrong, and it required a reset and the need to find aligned and common pathways that allow everybody to rise with the tide. If you don't mind, I can just read it. Sure. It says, 70 years ago, an earlier generation of world leaders came together to create the United Nations. From the ashes of war and division, they fashioned this organization and the values of peace, dialogue, and international cooperation which underpin it. The supreme embodiment of this value is in the Charter of the United Nations. That was in 1945. Today we are also taking a decision of great historic significance. We resolve to build a better future for all people, including the millions who have been denied the chance to lead decent, dignified, and rewarding lives and to achieve their full human potential. We can be the first generation to succeed in ending poverty, just as we may be the last to have a chance of saving the planet. The world will be a better place in 2030 if we succeed in our objectives. And it goes on. While there has been this, what you call, even when the declaration was made, it was on the basis of something that was in a big, hairy, audacious goal. And obviously you had the right words said, the right commitments made. In fact, on that particular year, we also saw a global commitment on environment, on biodiversity, and a number of global pledges and so on. Now, we have been what I would call now 1/3 of the journey has passed. The sad reality is that very little has progressed. And unfortunately, while governments have stepped forward to commit and realize the need, the rest of society have fallen into a state of apathy. You know, aside from greed and selfishness, apathy is a big issue that you're dealing with in the room. And probably it's the elephant in the room, the fact that we at the individual level don't realize that we are on a self-destruct mode in dealing with the issues of poverty, inequality, environmental destruction, lack of awareness of what is happening around us. We have become that, you know, the individual that's only self-serving and only focus on our individual selves. Now, this is the kind of challenge and uphill battle that we're dealing with. In many places that we see small successes, and I believe that small successes gives hope. But however, it requires a much greater scale of effort to move the needle. So I think it's more than I would call the fact that people choose not to be aware than not being aware of things. So meaning that, they don't realize that the fact that, that even without SDGs, you need to be what do you call, a rightful citizen of Earth. With, rights comes with responsibility. Yes, this is what Gandhi said in 1945, and the Declaration of the Charter of Human Rights. He said rights has to come with responsibility, failing which it would only be a pursuit of the individual embodiment. And I think that's the kind of thing that we need to really reset and re-look back. If we are going to deal with, the agenda. Now, while all of these forums, and I've been talking to a number of people around, it feels very frustrating, the fact that we all talk the right things. In the context of Malaysia, all of our policies are aligned. Our plans are pretty much, I call, top-notch in terms of by global standards. We have all the instruments of delivery. All of these things that we do, including whether Think City does as an organization and many others who are here, we do all of the things. The fact is that why aren't we seeing this being replicated? Why is it not becoming like a wildfire? All of this is common knowledge, common sense. Getting communities to be involved, participating, collaborating, focusing on the common good. And every effort that we find in every response in our work over the last decade, we have found that whenever that we get people aligned and moved, there's a huge amount of, I would call, that human goodness prevails. That we see in every one of our projects. We have now done more than close to 800 different types of interventions in the country. In every one of them, I can identify the fact that the human goodness has been the fundamental factor of taking the effort forward. Because in everything that we support, we only provide a nominal support. And most times, it is the citizen realizing the fact that they need to take action. And we equip them, enable them, facilitate them, but beyond which it's about them taking it forward. And we have seen this, and the fact that we can go around different parts of the country, the projects are visible and so on. But the challenge is that the goals that has been set under the SDG declarations are what I would call, it's not impossible, but they're audacious. And being audacious, the challenge lies, right, whether everyone is going to say that, we need to change and we need to accept the fact that we cannot continue to live the way we have lived. And I think fundamentally that goes to issues around whether, citizens are prepared to actually change their consumption habits, their behavioral patterns, their what do you call, their responsibility to society at large and planet in general. More importantly, specifically, I would also say that the fact that we need businesses to stand up and own up. Today, we have a situation where both what I call the citizens and citizens and businesses can get away by externalizing the problems. I can throw rubbish anywhere I want, or I can pollute rivers as a company, or destroy the environment, or create consumption that is not needed and get away with it and make profits. Or in my case, an individual person, that problem is now outsourced to someone else. Now, it's not the problem of, I would probably say that government is that big, that much it can do, unless you're going to make the whole of society to become government. And I think there's a fundamental need to shift the conversation away from what I would call government, because we accept the fact that government should do what is by law is their responsibility, and that is dictated by what you call the functions of government and the resources that is provided through taxation. But what is provided through taxation and by rule of law is not enough to achieve the SDGs, unless and if fundamentally society and business reset and relook at the fact that they cannot prioritize profits or prioritize gains or benefits and socialize losses and so on. And if we're going to have and accept that philosophy in our lives, I don't think we are going to be in a situation to make any impact in our human existence.
I think that, and I'm going to segue to Dr. Zainal here, because I feel, and this is a comment, that in our race towards knowledge and intelligence, we've lost wisdom along the way. We've forgotten how to connect with our human selves and to connect with the earth and to value that it is a symbiotic relationship and we cannot keep taking without giving back. And so probably from an educational point of view, what are institutions of higher learning doing to combat this vis-a-vis the SDGs?
All right, thank you, Jia. I was just prepared to be discussion just now. Anyway, this is a very interesting, and I was actually eager to respond to that. This is something that it looks like even COVID doesn't really make us realize that the whole disruptions that COVID has impacted on education is not waking us up. So as a matter of responding to this and try to really make a difference, higher education universities, of course, it has to be started from primary and secondary. But let me share what we're doing, just to be like a very practical suggestions of what is happening. At the university, at the International Islamic University, what we do now is that we go to the extent that we put SDG as part and parcel, not just an ad hoc thing, not just a superficial thing to put up in advertisement, etc., to get students, but we put it as a hardcore KPI of the university. Because we realize that unless and until you really integrate that component inside the structure of performance and etc., nothing will happen. And that's what has been happening for the past many years. The concern about development, the concern about environment is nothing new. But what is not happening is that really change in terms of what we give the students. Not only on technical is there on the internet, but the values, the competency has to be drastically changed. In order to do that, what we do is that before this, we hope that that values of sustainability and etc. is to be equipped via co-curriculum activities, via students' activity. But we go the opposite. We go the very drastic that that's not sufficient. The co-curriculum is now become the core curriculum. Means that the component for sustainability and etc. become the core to the extent that all formal classroom has to be connected with communities, has to be connected with environment. And this is the change that we're doing now, to the extent that all students are compulsory to have sustainability introductions, all final year students to be connected to community, all lecturers has to do SDG thing, and this is compulsory. It's not by the means of like, if you do it, fine, no. We are making it very compulsory because we thought the reset button is once there, and if you're not taking the chance, the window will be gone, and we'll not be able to come back for this.
Yeah, so I think that there's a comment from you is that we're not paradigm shifting enough. We're just hoping that it will go away so that we can then have business as usual. I'm getting that feeling from some people, yeah, some of the even institutions and the corporations. Hamdan, you want to just add to it? Yeah.
I'm just going to be a bit controversial here in saying that, in the case of Prof, I think we know each other for more than a decade, and we've been trying to push this needle on sustainability. The more I reflect on it, this year marks the 50th anniversary of the Earth Day, and in April this year was interesting to see that, and it was interesting that when Earth Day was declared, it was at a moment in time when people realized that, we are on a pathway to self-destruct. 50 years later, we have just gone far worse, and there's no change at all. Fundamentally, there's no change at all. And if you ask on the context of learning, there is, a fundamental, I would call that we have not unlearned or we need to, a lot of learning that you see is a learning about consumption, it means growth. It's all about development, it's about progress. But that development, progress, and so on comes at the expense. In economics, they usually use the word externality, and then people forget it because, okay, it's fine, it's an externality, and and they use the word ceteris paribus. Ceteris paribus meaning that all assumptions kept what you call stagnant, and you do your education, but that the fact that the externality is so overwhelming, it's never part of your conversation in your learning. You continue the life on the pathway of this limitless growth. The Club of Rome in 1972 published this book report called The Limits to Growth. And if you were to reread it, a lot of what was said was then still relevant, and it doesn't change nature. Now, I don't know whether, in 5 decades, a lot of what was said then has never gone through the education system, or people choose to ignore all of this and continue with their lives.
Yeah. So moving on to Izumi, the mic keeps getting passed to you, and you keep having to pass it back. I apologize, but I mean, let's look at the architectural and the building industry, right? It's very commendable that you've moved towards LEEDs and platinum, but once again, people are ticking the box. We have a lot of people, we give them visionary ideas, and what do? They reduce it to a box that they can tick, and, oh, I've done it. And they've forgotten about the post-build maintenance, the post-build experience, the human-centric, or what we call the place-led design is not there. So what's your comment about paradigm shifting, or what's in the future for Malaysian architects and the building industry?
Yeah, thank you, Peng. Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm from the views from Pertubuhan Architect Malaysia, PAM. Okay, PAM is a Malaysian Institute of Architects. Yes, there are a few efforts that we have done before to create awareness. I'm going to respond to what you mentioned about I think you are referring to Green Building Index, GBI, one of our effort jointly with the Association of Consulting Engineers, basically to promote green and sustainability environment development. Yes, currently it is in the tick box manner that you have to score a certain point so that your project will be certified at certain rating, whether it's gold or silver or just certified. But at the same time, I like to talk about leaders as well, because the topic was given leader. If I may share the slide, I have just a few slides. Yeah, can somebody put on the screen the slide? So yes, this is what was given to me is about enhancing leadership for SDGs. What I want to highlight here that the way I look at leaders or leadership in 3 different silos. Okay, one is leaders. Okay, as most of the people will perceive leaders as the government. Okay, but the other group of people perceive leaders as politicians. And who are the true leaders? So this is just short summary of the differences between leaders and politicians. I know that this is quite sensitive. Many people actually do not like to hear what I'm going to say, but I believe the people in this room will agree with me. Politicians campaign for election mostly for their personal ambitions, while leaders raise support to advance a worthy cause for nation's development. This is the major difference. And politicians are interested in power and position, while leaders, they are willing to give away power and also position for the good cause, to support for the development. And politicians divide mankind into classes, okay? Tools and enemies, while leaders see everyone as potential partners. So these are the world that we are dealing with today, and politicians build teams based on political, racist, religious, and other sentiments, but leaders based on competence, shared vision, and values. So these are the major difference that we have to understand. We are pushing for SDG. Who are the government? They are politicians. So you see the difference already. You are pushing the agenda which is not in their priority.
Okay, how to make SDG agenda as priority? SDG, what we know as today SDG, if you look at this person, Nelson Mandela, he fought for what we call SDG today since 40 years ago. Before SDG become SDG, he already worked on it. So from my estimation, 12 out of 17 SDGs actually has been championed by him before SDG. That was 40 years ahead. But you can see he's not really successful in pushing it ahead. One of the reasons because he is not a real politician, but he's a true leader. And today, we have the 17th SDG, and the report from UN 2018 said that SDG progress is not moving fast enough. Okay, to meet the 17 goals, leaving no one, or like Peng saying, is nothing behind by 2030. The reason why it's not moving fast enough, because we are pushing it to politicians. You have to remember, in my first slide, I already say that politicians need to champion something for their own ambitions. What they need is a popularity. So what are the good strategies to meet SDG, being the agenda that being pushed by politicians who are we perceived as the government today? We must make SDG become a popular agenda. So this is one of the platforms that we need. So to make, to improve the awareness, to make everybody aware that SDG, Sustainable Urban Agenda, even the new urban agenda, is something that will be the topic that people are talking about. Okay, everybody knows that. Okay, it's something. Sustainability is something that we need, but how to frame it to the 17 goals is not that something that everybody can say. So if we continue to do this campaign about the importance of SDG and sustainability, and the politicians, they don't want to be left behind. They will take as this agenda is the important agenda for their own personal campaign. So this is how we actually, as the general public, can push a good agenda, a good worthy agenda to change the politician to a great leader.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, there's been enough said about we are not in any other crisis except for a crisis of leadership. You know, and really, I think that we are all being played in many ways. Not just the human beings, the planet is being played for a small minority group with a huge monetary agenda, right? And so, coming back to voices, then you know, an apathy that Hamdan mentioned. How do we get people out of their apathetic state? And we were talking about, you know, now with the pandemic, people are now fighting for survival more than ever. People are losing jobs, yet government's still talking about, you know, gross GDP. You know, I mean, are we measuring everything wrong? I mean, you know, you talked about data is important. We don't have enough data, but you know, there's a saying that, you know, everything can be counted, but not everything that is counted counts. And I think we've forgotten what counts really to make a better life, you know. So rather than a better building, how about a better experience? Is everybody in there happy? Is everybody in there comfortable? So Darren, can you just give an example for that?
For me, it all depends on what everybody's agenda is. Politicians and business, I gave 4 examples how to make SDG work. You need the participation of the government, the business sector, communities and individuals. It has to work together. If all those 17 goals, if every one of us take all those 222 parliamentarians, sit down with them, tell them these 17 goals, if you work on that, it's workable, people will vote for you. No poverty. Everybody wants no poverty. Gender equality. Everything there actually is in their favor, but they have to be made aware. A possibility is politicians are not aware the benefit they will gain if they achieve all those 17 goals under their own agenda.
Yeah.
And greed, when it comes what he shared just now, greed is one of the reasons why we see apathy happening. There's still the human nature of greed. We want the fast way to be rich. We don't care about the environment. In 2012, there was a animated cartoon. A lot of kids were touched by that cartoon, 2012. It's called Lorax, L-O-R-A-X. It talks about the environment. Greed caused people in such a way that after all the trees have been cut, the greedy companies will sell you oxygen so that they can make money. That is what is happening. If you all can watch that movie, it's a great way to create awareness about greed in society. So it all depends.
Yeah, so I think that one of the comments that I got on my feed was that out of all of these goals, the only way to really get things moving is 17 partnerships, right? It's almost like we have to practice the multi-level marketing component of how to sell SDGs. I mean, I think we need to get those the platinum roundtable multi-level marketers to really teach you about spreading the message, right? To really understand key motivators of why is it that it's good for you to do good, right? And I think that a lot of things that have been we've been seeing is that we have a youth immersed in fear. The Gen Zs are so terrified that there's not going to be a world for them to live their life out to, a comfortable world. They're worried that there's going to be no fish, no trees, no oxygen. I've spoken to 17-year-olds, 15-year-olds. They're genuinely living in fear. And so there's and they are actually coming on board. So, I think Time said that this millennial and the Zs are the ones that will save us all. I really believe it. But they just need some emotional intelligence to do that as well. Coming back to the youth, it's unfortunate that we also have a huge youth poverty, and it's rising because people keep having children without being able to afford to have children, and then that's a very vicious cycle. But how do we make sure that we help to raise them out of the cycle of poverty? And that's why we have Nizam here, who's doing a great job with this Adab Youth Garage. So please tell us what you've been doing and and your experience with the youth, the poor.
Okay, thank you. My name is Nizam. I'm from Adab Youth Garage, AYG. So we have 6 centers for the whole Selangor. Right now we are focused in Selangor, but we still open it for another state who want to collaborate with us. So out of 6 centers that we have 4 of it at PPR area, which is PPR is many of them is a B40 group.
Yeah, Pusat Perumahan
Rakyat. Yeah, betul, Pusat Perumahan Rakyat. The tallest one, the tallest building. So we have 4 of it. One is at PPR Kota Damansara, and then Highcom. Another one is at Kota Highcom. Another one is Taman Medan. Okay, so we are already in Kota Damansara. We are on. Our age is almost 7 years. We operated all the 6 of centers, and the first PPR that we reached is Kota Damansara until now. And you see, in this SDG agenda, I see that the agenda is not truly or totally is not known by the mass. And what we see is we have to do something more serious if you want to this agenda. You want to make things happen.
Nizam, you were saying that you're more comfortable cakap pada bahasa Malaysia.
Yeah, okay.
So sila.
So okay, kalau sebelum kita pergi ke SDG agenda, apa yang kami lihat di center-center yang kami buat, banyak ataupun ramai di kalangan belia ni. Sebelum tu center kami ni memang kami buka setiap hari, every day, daripada 3 petang sehingga 10 malam.
Umur mereka berapa?
Dan kita buka pada semua. So what we make is we try to make the safe space for them lah. So then they can mingle around with their friend, and then kita buat activities for them, and then kita make engagement and attachment with them, with the kids, the youngsters, and of course the parents self lah. And with that kita pun dapat engage juga dengan community. So bila kita engage dengan community, we find out that itulah tadi, kemiskinan tu memang menjerat mereka lah. Actually banyak kes yang kita lihat, mereka nak keluar daripada poverty tu, but then they can't because dia orang ada anak, and then dia orang tak boleh nak bekerja sepenuh masa, and then end of the day kadang-kadang tu bila anak yang membesar tu dia suruh stop schooling, then tolong jaga adik, then there's a sad story, a lot of sad story. Then I think that.
Can I just translate?
Oh, okay.
So I think that what Nizam is saying, they open the place to everyone, and when they get to know them and engage deeper with the youth in their community, they find that a lot of them feel trapped by their poverty, and they can't break out of the cycle because you know, some of the young women have children very early, and they have to stop working or stop school, and then when the children get to a certain age, they're told to stop school because they then have to then contribute to the household income by working. So this cycle perpetuates. Boleh terangkan macam mana struktur organisasi ADAP, Youth Garage Band? What is the organisation structure of your organisation? Okay,
the organisation itself. Actually kami ni memang sebuah NGO yang berdaftar di bawah Register of Society. Dan kami laksanakan program ini sebenarnya kita cuba untuk attach bersama dengan komuniti lah. Setiap center yang kami adakan, kita akan letakkan 2 orang full yang kita namakan sebagai youth worker, full time youth worker. So then sebab apa full time? Kita tak pergi kepada apa kita panggil ni sukarelawan ni, sebab sukarelawan ni datang dan pergi ya. So they like touch and go. Kita nak apa yang kita nak adalah kita nak engage dengan community tu, so dan kita perlu orang yang serius. So to be serious, kita memang kena letak 2 orang yang
So they're saying that, you know, for every center that they have 2 full-time youth workers. And why full-time? Because, you know, volunteers come and go, so they don't provide that consistent experience that kids need. I mean, you know, I think there's been a study said that, you know, kids thrive in consistent environments. They need to know that there's going to be the same person there because they've kind of bonded with them. And if you keep chopping and changing this person, they're going to think, well, you know, we're not that important. You're treating us like, you know, just by the way.
Betul.
So can you elaborate further on that?
Okay, so then the kids when they bila lihat abang-abang atau kakak-kakak dia ni every day, the trust will be there. Termasuk juga dengan community tau. So then bila kita communicate dengan community, the same face, then dia akan tahu apa yang kita buat. Dia tahu kita punya sincere of our heart to do that. So mereka akan banyak memberi lah, dan dia akan banyak respon yang positif.
So they said that, you know, when they continue to bond with the same youth workers, there's a trust that then they can then you know, share more or learn more. Also they want to learn, right? So there's that motivation to learn. Because, you know, a lot of children who are in urban poor, they give up. They, you know, they really putus asa, kan? So what you have to do is inject value back into their lives. So I want to ask you, how, I mean, if we're talking about leaders, how do you build up this network of youth workers?
Okay, how to build up the youth workers? So kami berkolaborasi bersama dengan banyak agensi kerajaan. Seperti contoh dekat Shah Alam, Ken Rimba, we collaborate with MBSA. So thanks for MBSA because MBSA sponsor everything to make things happen for the center at Ken Rimba, Shah Alam. And Taman Medan juga kita collaborate with Lembaga Zakat Selangor.
This is partnerships with MBSA, which is the Shah Alam Council.
Betul.
And then the Taman Medan?
Taman Medan with Lembaga Zakat Selangor.
Which is the Muslim Islamic
apa dia panggil?
Zakat is charity?
Zakat we call what? Endowment tu bukan apa ni?
Endowment, zakat. The Islamic Endowment Center.
Because then lepas tu kita banyak berkolaborasi juga dengan NGO yang lain. Dan sebenarnya berkolaborasi ni banyak memberikan manfaat lah. Now and I nak stress juga kat sini masa sekarang ni adalah masa yang sesuai untuk kita collaborate dengan lebih ramai orang, dan kita tak mampu untuk bergerak seorang pun. In fact, AYG itself, kita tak mampu nak bergerak seorang, dan kita kena encourage everybody yang berada di sekitar kita ni, dan semua agensi kerajaan termasuklah community pun kena engage dengan kita.
Okay. So he's saying that now is the best time to reach out to the community, not just governments, community, and perhaps even private organizations,
betul.
to partner to make a change.
Yeah, and kami juga berkolaborasi dengan Yayasan Raja Muda, Selangor Youth Community,
dan charity foundations.
Yes, and then sebenarnya apa yang berlaku dekat bawah sana adalah what happened at ground. Banyak youngsters ni dia tidak akses kepada akademik punya laluan pun sebenarnya, dan kebanyakan mereka drop out from school just because of their friend, and then lepas tu they feel that they don't want to go anymore to school because some say like that, sometimes that they say that saya tak boleh lah bang, saya pergi sekolah saya dah mantul balik, maksudnya dia tak boleh nak belajar dah pun. And then actually there is another way, because kita tak perlu pergi belajar ke sekolah kalau kata kita tak boleh, because kita ada TVET sekarang ni, dan diorang tak akses pun TVET tu, diorang tak tahu pun actually, dan kesian sangat bila kita bawa diorang ke tempat-tempat yang macam bila berkolaborasi dengan ramai pihak ni, contohnya Yayasan Raja Muda yang terbaru ni dia bawa kita bersama dengan ke KDU College Shah Alam, dan KDU what KDU done is diorang prepare modul, dan diorang buat satu program namanya self discovering modul, workshop, and then kat situ budak-budak ni didedahkan dengan buat bakery, buat apa lagi macam-macam kat situ. Okay.
Alright. So, so he's saying that the problem is the lack of access. So one of the things he needs to do is to make sure that he provides access towards education through partnership for these children, right? So
betul. Okay. Dan kadang-kadang kita kata kita dah ada semua dekat dalam internet. Everything is in the laptop or in the handphone. But memang serius saya kata benda-benda macam ni memang dia orang tak akan akses pun. Serius. So apa yang kita kena buat adalah kita have to reach out to them and do some program with them, and kita terangkan dengan mereka.
So so a lot of people are saying, well, they have the digital wherewithal, they can access anything they want. But some people don't even know how to access, right? I've worked with students who don't even know how to ask the right questions in Google to find the right information. So I think that, we have so much technology, but we've forgotten to connect this to the human, right? And so only those who have the middle class or the intelligence that has what we call the digital intelligence can access, but and a lot of people are left behind.
Yes, that's the idea. So maksudnya sekarang ni masanya untuk kita bawa turun agenda SDG agenda ni, jangan lagi kita berada di awangan. Saya setuju dengan beberapa panelis kita yang mengatakan betul lah, politik ni politician okay, tak apalah, biar orang buat kerja diorang, itu kerja diorang. Tapi apa yang kita kena buat adalah kita kena make move by our group. So, mungkin dalam group ni kita boleh buat satu move yang maksudnya kita boleh pull everybody of us together in one group, and then kita letak priority which one come first yang kita kena buat.
Okay. So one of the things that we have to do is, sure, I acknowledge that we have problems with politicians, but let's leave them to what they do best, but focus on what we can do best, which is mobilize committees, mobilize special working groups.
Betul. Then and of course as an NGO kita tidak mempunyai like a university, and university dia ada kepakaran dia tentang bagaimana untuk kita buat pengukuran. Sometimes bila kita buat satu perkara itu kita kena something yang kita boleh measurable kan. So kita start from here, and then at the end of the day kita kena capai macam mana. So then kat situ kita pull everybody inside. Termasuk yang kumpulan pakar, termasuknya juga yang nak implement ni, yang nak buat benda ni. So then bila end of the year kita boleh balik, bukan maksudnya kumulate balik kita punya calculation tu tadi, then kita tengok how far we can go and we put it in percentage.
So he's saying that we need to put in the same room or the same team the implementers as well as the experts Yeah, and one of the things is to create what I think you're saying baseline.
Yeah.
So if you know what's going on the ground, then you can see the improvement, right?
Yes,
Kalau you
betul.
tak ada baseline, you cannot measure success.
Yes, exactly.
So
Yeah.
from there, I'm going to go segue to Omna to talk about baselining. You know, and also Hamdan, you might want to chip in on that as well.
Yeah. So I think that's also where I'd like to say the problem and the opportunities lie in terms of baseline, because I think the way, whether it's government, the way the government works, and the way even civil societies have worked. You know, one constant in any society are the civil society organizations, because civil organizations are the institutional memory of everything that's taken place in any nation or any space. Governments and politicians come and go. But in terms of how we actually implement or design projects and implement them on the ground, you find that it's sometimes not done with any kind of concrete baseline data, and that's why data is so very important, even to the SDGs, which is bringing data to the fore. And just like the program that we're doing with the APPGM, creating those baselines at the parliamentary constituency is very important in enabling us to use that evidence to even determine how we read the realities of the communities that we serve. So without the baseline, I think we are just going to be shooting the breeze and, you know.
I'm just going to throw the question to the floor. Do you know what baseline is? What's the definition of baseline? Hamdan, maybe you would like to explain.
I guess like in any intervention that you do, the fundamental is actually first to step in and understand the context of any, example. Let me just use the example of, you talked about PPR, and we are working also in the upgrading. In fact, we feel one of the key focus for us has been in terms of there's so much of public housing built. People forget that public housing also needs to be renewed. So in the context of renewing public housing, we really need to go in and understand the context. And to understand the context, you may need to actually you need to start from ground zero, because most of the times data is not available. The people who are actually supposed to have data, your housing boards and so on, they have data that's either obsolete or not relevant, and they're not data that's useful to understand the issues and challenges. So in every project that you start with, you need to invest time to first understand what I call site investigation, the simple terms, and also collect as much data that is relevant so that you can measure change over time. And in the case of the PPR, where we have launched, in fact we use an interesting approach where we're using a digital platform, particularly in the COVID environment, we call K2K, where every resident in that particular PPR, when they receive any form of assistance, they are only going to get assistance if they provide the data, so that when we collect the data, we have up-to-date information. And interesting, in the data, the pilot program that we ran, the kind of findings that you find in this data, the data that you find all of a sudden that you can understand how often they eat, what they eat, how many people live in their families, what education levels they are, the challenges in their individual situations, their needs. Now all of these things then becomes the basis of designing a program. Now without that baseline data, you can't design anything that is going to be relevant and useful. You will be, in the case of that, so one of the things that was interesting comment, that feedback they gave us was during the COVID, people were giving a lot of aid. There was in this instance a lady, old lady, and she was struggling because she was diabetic. And she was diabetic and she didn't have the needles to put in her insulin. Usually her children provides this. Because of the MCO, the children couldn't come and she couldn't administer her diabetic medicine. She didn't need cooking oil. She didn't need, because she said, I've got a lot of cooking oil here, look, I've got a lot of this aid, it's coming in. People are doing good. But because they don't understand need, you are not able to match between supply and demand. So the baseline provides the basis of really then, before starting any form of intervention, to really investigate and then only find, put together a plan or strategy about what kind of interventions that you go about doing. And this has been the basis of how we have worked, because that's the basis of eventually that we can also demonstrate is there change. By virtue that you systematically look at over a period of time, and we have done this in different cities that we have worked, where we started Georgetown. Now we have done 3 rounds of baseline. If we go into the city of Georgetown, we know exactly every floor, every business, every unit, who stays, what goes on, what's happening, and so on. And with that, we can really understand what's really changing. So those are things that I think we need to actually be mindful of as we do any form of intervention.
Like I think we seem to be a nation obsessed with demographics. And now we've got a census. And again, I'm going through half the census, and I can't move forward because you're asking me a question that I cannot answer, because there's no box for me to tick. So again, you know, the disconnect from the human experience. So we were working, Think City was working with PPR Kota Damansara, and there is a lady in a wheelchair on the 9th floor. But unfortunately, the lifts don't work. So, and the municipal council keeps fixing the lift, but then they give up. So they don't understand why they are fixing the lift, why it's important for the lift not to break down, because there's one person who really counts who can't get out of her house if there is no lift. She can't buy food, she can't, you know, she has no access to anything. So I think that when we are so stuck on numbers, it's dehumanizing. A number has got no soul. So really we need to go back into the psychographic, the why. We have what? We know there's tons of what, you know. SDGs are full of what, but what is the why? What are the whys that we are helping to bridge that gap? So we have questions from the floor, and so there's Alan Wong from Sabah. Hello, Alan Wong. He says, hello, friends of SDG. His question is, who can be the champions in Malaysia at different levels of leadership that will commit and take the bold move? So if you say, let's go down the ground, who is it on the ground? You know.
Okay, I think what Nizam just shared with us just now, I think it's very interesting. There are many NGO, association, even individual out there actually doing a lot of work on the ground. And even when I was in the Kuala Lumpur Advisory Council, we also collaborate with some even local politicians to do some work to increase awareness and the actual physical work, how to improve the situation in some of PPR. I remember we did some project in PPR Lembah Pantai. And I think, like I mentioned before, I think the way that we are doing from bottom up, I think we need a lot of hard work from the people like Nizam and the group and this individual and other NGOs. But to accelerate the process, the change process, you need the top-down initiative as well. Then when you have the top-down initiative and bottom-up project on the ground, everything can be changed faster. But to change the leader, to understand and to take this as the main agenda, we need to put more effort to let the leaders or politicians to see how actually these people are moving on the ground, and this is something which is very, very important. And no doubt that I think we need to put more effort on the ground to help the people, because yes, like what Peng just mentioned just now, yes, there are individual needs sometimes that the people up there don't really understand. But people who are attached to these people at the grassroots understand the actual needs. How are we going to deliver the data up there so that they can make a precise decision that benefit all the people? So these all, I think we have to collaborate, and I really wish that the organization like AYG just now, that to be given opportunity to be more exposed, that to attract more people to collaborate with them. And I truly believe that one day you will get the support from the top, and that is the ultimate objective.
Darren?
To Alan Wong, to answer his question from Sabah, Alan Wong, when you ask who is going to make that bold move to be the leader to move it, my answer is, why not you? Why not us? Why not you? I give 2 examples. My background is not taking care of old people. My background is banker, internal auditor for 23 years. But when I came to the care homes and I see that they can be given better care, I ask myself, why not me? Why not me, the one doing it? And that's why I left to do that. I give a simpler explanation. If you're at home, you see the dishes are not washed, and you expect your missus or your kids to do it, and you every day grumble, and I ask you back, why not you? And if everybody can be that bold and take that initiative to move, I will be the one to make that first move. Then semua boleh berlaku. Like you said just now, ada gap, ada yang TVET dia orang tak faham, tak pasti macam nak mulakan lagi. They don't even understand how to start to move. So you took the initiative, Youth Garage took the initiative, so other people pun boleh, semua orang pun boleh ambil inisiatif. Jadi sayalah yang akan ambil langkah pertama untuk lakukan sesuatu untuk negara ni.
That's right. I just nak tambah sikit. So then I suggest that bagus untuk situasi kita sekarang ni dan discussion kita sekarang ni, untuk kita pula menjadi kita panggil apa ni, pusher kepada, bukan pusher yang satu tu. Okay, untuk kita push, untuk kita apa kita panggil supaya everybody dekat Malaysia ni, all dekat rakyat lah, I mean, boleh memainkan peranan masing-masing dan tidak perlu menunggu sesiapa. Kita kena move.
Yeah, you don't have to wait for anybody. Everybody has a role to play. Just start. And I think that, you know, I love the Think City power of small. Start small. Don't try and change the world. Just change your neighborhood. Just change your street. Just change your neighbor. If you're fighting, maybe make peace. You know, or if you're a child, then if your teacher's unhappy, give her an apple. You know, just little things. So that thanks.
That answers Alan Wong's question.
Yeah. So this thing about that the responsibility lies on everyone, but I think also in our work we realize that people can't just begin like that on their own. There must be, so that's why education plays a huge role in that process, because where are the spaces that these people are in which can kindle in their hearts this need to do something? And I think that's important. And again, that's why I feel I come from a civil society movement of 20 over years in the gender movement. That was what, in a way, kindled the work that I do, and this is why I do what I do. You know, so we need to ask, what is the carrot that motivates people to move? And so where are the entry points where you can create that to actually happen? Because it just doesn't happen on its own.
Yes, yeah. So I think that, you know, at the schools, so Alan, there are many places that you can join, the Lions Club, you've got the Rotary Club, you've got Adab Youth Garage now that you can join and learn to be possibly a youth worker. You can start a youth garage in Sabah.
Yes.
Huh? You can talk, now you know who to talk to, right? You can learn to be, you can grow to be an architect or a town planner to make sure you design the next generation towns that are great. I don't know how old you are, Alan, but nothing is too big or too small for you. Just set your mind to it. You don't need a lot of money, you just need some sweat capital. The power of one. Sweat capital is, you know, your own kaki tangan lah, buat lah. Just go down on the ground, roll your sleeves up and just go and do it. So thank you. We've got another question from Joshua Chow. Morning, you just mentioned placemaker. Who are placemakers? Are all of us? So I'm not going to answer this. I think I'm going to give it to either Pandan. Can you mention what a placemaker is?
I probably just say that every one of us in the room are placemakers. At the end of the day, you know, the fact that, you know, if we are, you know, I think every one of us like to, beauty is in us. If every one of us, even if you start the day, you make yourself look good. The place where you live, you make it tidy. The neighborhood that you are in, you want to be in a neighborhood that is lush and nice and comfortable. Now is what at the end of the day is at the very basic essence of placemaking, and every one of us are placemakers. We are able to transform space into a place by a simple use of our own intellect, effort, and our own what they call ingenuity. Because it could be a simple exercise of just putting a stool, a bench, to and make a point of focal point, a place of convergence, making a neighborhood feel comfortable, cleaner, and so on. So though the word sounds very ambiguous and overarching, but I think the very basic essence is about every one of us are there to make a place, and every one of us equipped to make a place. Don't be fooled by the fact that you've got to be an architect, planner, designer, or a community organizer, and so on, because you don't need any of those skills in making a place.
Yeah. So I think that placemaking, many people think placemakers are event organizers. They're not. Placemakers can be very useful at the start of every design process, to look at it from a human point of view. So I think that there is a methodology called the city at eye level. It says that oftentimes we design cities from the sky down, but we're not birds. Oftentimes we design cities that are for machines, but the human eye is from 2 feet, 1 feet, toddler, all the way to, okay, what's the tallest man in the world? 6 feet, 7 feet. That is the human experience and the visual experience. So placemakers challenge developers, they challenge architects, they challenge town planners to say, how can you make us have a better experience in my town? So Jane Jacobs, if you want to read up on placemaking, Jane Jacobs is the original placemaker. She had no qualification, but she fought Robert Moses to say, you have no right to tear down my community to make roads, because my community with my shops are where it's home, it's where I belong. So, do read up Project for Public Space, PPS, Jane Jacobs, there is Placemaking X. Go and Google it, right? So, is there any questions from the floor? Yes.
Good morning, Good morning, everyone. My name is Catherine Anila. I am the founder of Vanguards for Change. It is a youth-led NGO that focuses on child rights advocacy and digital resilience. So I'm also part of Youth Internet Governance Forum's Youth for Digital Sustainability working group. First, I'd like to thank everyone here on the panel, because I really learned a lot today, and especially Mr. Hamdan for raising the issue of lack of apathy, because that led to a conversation on how vital it is for us to have emotional intelligence, and how we need behavioral change, right? We spoke about all of that. And so I was just having one question, actually. How many of us in this room were actually present here in the now throughout this entire session without having thoughts about things that you cannot control, which makes you anxious, or just generally feeling low and out of place? How many of us were actually present here? Because I know I wasn't, right? I would really like to talk about that, because when we talk about apathy, last night I decided to log off my social media because I could not take the things that were happening. I just got so overwhelmed, right? And we're talking about sustainability over here. In year 2030 or 2050, if we want to have a sustainable urban nation, how are we going to address the issue of mental health? Because then in 10, 30 years, the leaders who will be making the sustainable development goals a reality would be us youths. And it's quite obvious, it's clearly seen in statistics that more than half of Malaysia's population have mental health problems.
Yeah.
How do we address that?
So thank you. So I think that she's mentioned a few issues. So one is, she ended with mental health, but there's also a bigger issue about apathy and the basically how this sucks all your attention, right? So how do we become sustainable
when half of our time is spent on this? How do we lead movements when we're busy playing our games, when we're chatting, and really wasting our time away and our lives away?
Thanks for that, Catherine, and welcome to the youth in the room. This issue of mental health, the forces of society that distract us from what we choose to do, I think one of the important issues that we need to address is the lack of purpose. So, I mean, the very fact that we're talking about what we're talking about right now is, in order to make it a reality, we need to be very steadfast towards our purpose. And I think for every individual, community, institution, government, society as a whole, I think we need to be very clear that we are not an aimless pilot, you know, that's just flying along without knowing what the goal and destination. But for me, in the context of today's conversation, that framework for action and that radar is provided by the framework of the SDGs. But the point I want to make is, at the core of it is, are we asking ourselves what my purpose is? To whether it's myself, my family, my neighbors, my community, my country. You know, and I think if we can't answer that question ourselves, we will be that aimless pilot.
Yeah. So instead of saying what is purpose, I'm going to open it to the floor, starting with Darren, to ask you, when did you discover your purpose that led you to this, right? So in 5 minutes, I mean in 2 minutes.
Less. When I was in secondary school in 1994-95, I believe, because I read a lot. I read the newspapers back then a lot, the Star, the New States Times, and I believe that during that time, back then itself, I believe that if I want Malaysia to be better, back then in schooling time, I can do it myself. I can do it. And last time I thought the only way to do it is to be a politician. When I was young, I thought the only way to improve this country is to be a politician. So I did studies, and I found out politicians must have money, and that's why I went to the bank and worked in the bank. And then as time goes on, I realized that you don't have to be a politician to make things work, change to happen in this country. Anyone, sesiapa pun boleh tukar cara masa depan kita. We can change our own future.
Well said. Izumi?
Yeah, okay. Talking about purpose, okay. I think, I mean, Darren just mentioned that when he was children, when I was children also, I want to be architect, but not for any purpose, but because I see how my grandfather built house. So I think, okay, to know how to build house, timber houses at that time, I have to be architect. But when I start to learn more about architecture and built environment, I start to realize actually, construction is a major or the biggest ecosystem in the world. Construction. Anything you do related to construction, you stay in a house, house need to be constructed. Even if you work in factory or whatever, it still relate to construction. So in the economic ecosystem, even social ecosystem, construction play a very major role. So I start to think that how can I contribute to improve the whole ecosystem? Okay, I don't have money, I don't have nothing much, so I cannot be the contractor, you need money, I cannot be developer, you need money. But I have some ideas that I can share with people. That's why I become an architect, or maybe a planner, who actually can contribute your wealth, but it may not be a tangible wealth like money or physical thing, but the idea that you can continuously grow and contribute the back to the people for the development of the country, of the world. So how, no matter how little your contribution to the ecosystem, you can see the effects. Okay.
Thanks. Maybe I'll just respond to what was raised. I think being we need to be present in every moment of our life. And unfortunately, with technology and everything else, we end up becoming, I would call it's like drugs. You end up creating, you alter you have an alter self, and you live a life that is not rooted in reality. Being present means that knowing yourself within your family, knowing yourself within your own immediate, knowing your neighbors, knowing your community and so on, engaging, having face-to-face conversation, connecting, and most times we unfortunately have failed. What in the old days, you call it the spirit of a kampong, and that spirit is totally lost. Being part of a community, knowing one another, familiarity, sociability, and so on. If you don't have that and you don't do that, then you will go lead a life of anomie, meaning that you isolate yourself, you will end up moving to have the tendencies of even suicide, mental health, and all other factors. They're all related. The more you relate to people, the less mental health will be. The less you are related to people, the more mental health. And this it's very well established in psychology, in psychiatry, and so on, in terms of what do you call it, the factors that drive people to isolate themselves. Social media, unfortunately, is the new evil. Even though the people who have promoted this started with good intentions, every good intentions also lead to bad outcomes. You know, my friend here wants to build homes, houses, buildings, but the fact that you see the city landscape that we see in Kuala Lumpur today is a destruction that we're living with. So similarly, social media is an interesting Netflix social dilemma, and it's interesting watch to understand the people who are behind it, who are acknowledging the fact that the kind of destruction they were involved in. It's not to say technology is bad. You need to know how to use technology such that it will not become the destructive power. Now, with regards to purpose, at a personal self, I'm deeply rooted in being conscious of the fact that I want to live a life that has got meaning, purpose, and hopefully I can create impact. I'm driven by the fact that in whatever that I try to do, it could be just helping someone to leading an organization, and maybe my DNA is designed as such, being very conscious of the fact that that you cannot, let time pass. And that's why this issue also, I say the social media is an evil, because like what Ping said, that it is something that leads and distracts you from purpose. And it's about being rooted in the present self that allows then to embed yourself to drive that purpose, because you will be conscious of the fact that people in front of you are in need. And then if you don't do something, then you feel the basic essence of having humanity. It means that you're not qualified then to be part of human society. So maybe that's me.
Thank you.
Thank you. For me, it is really something that stems from family and how I was raised. And I think it's the same way that I'm raising my 4 children and in extension, our 3 grandchildren. I was raised in a home where the doors were always open. And I think many of us can resonate with that, right? Where you have neighbors, friends, you don't even know who's coming and who's going, but you know that your family is welcoming people, feeding people, and always we had a couple of concepts that were somehow our parents made sure that it was ingrained within us. And one is that you are a noble human being. You're not an animal, you're a noble human being. Nobility is something that is bestowed on human beings, nobility. And the other one is that every individual has the capacity to contribute towards the betterment of society. And so that was told to us very young. The third is that we need to embrace our purpose in the context of twofold moral purpose. One is how can I, whether in my education, in my value system, create certain values within myself to make myself that noble human being, number one. Number two is how can I use that, like Hamdan was saying, towards the common good. And I won't say that this is something that the family came up with. It is, I think what we have not mentioned here is also the role of faith. You know, I'm a Baha'i and I'm from the Baha'i background, and this is something that is taught to us from very young. And as a result of that, my husband and I are also doing it with our family and our children. So we find that our children are also very much engaged in social work, you know, community building and social work. And I'm saying the cycle needs to begin somewhere for it to have generational change. And so what you were telling Alan just now, you're saying it starts with you because it's like the visionaries that environmentalists are, right? They plant the seed, not having any idea whether they will live to see the tree and the fruit, but they plant the seed. And I think all of us, in some way, are planting seeds.
Yes, yes. I always call myself the gardener of hope. So what I want to also state is, you know, the faith. And I think too long, citizens here have been told, your faith looks at races, your faith divides. Actually, faith unites. So everything else is just an agenda for power. So you have to be careful about that. Yeah.
If I can just add, when the conversation started at the beginning at 9, and people talked about SDGs, I said, you know, all SDGs relates to all religions. And in fact, all religions promotes SDGs. So it's not like it started with a particular time, but it's all through time. And every religion advocates for that balance, to live life in a manner that what they call that you take what you need and ensure that you give back and do not create what you call harm and corruption. And this is very fundamental in all faith that I know of. It's not like a unique thing to a particular faith, but across all faith. The fact that we have gone so far away from faith, the fact that we have become faithless, now that is rooted in what I call the material culture that we have adopted. The material culture, the whole hedonistic lifestyle, this whole drive towards living to our fullest without being responsible, consuming, without acknowledging the kind of waste that we create, and not owning the fact that we are, we want our rights without responsibility, as I said earlier. Now that, unfortunately, is the biggest challenge that we are faced with. Now that is driven by business through advertising, through marketing, through all of the stuff. Now a lot of what you think the SDGs that we're dealing with, if we can't correct, and I'm not bringing, I think another one spoke about government. We said government has to do their job, and we hope the government will do their job. But there's a larger pool of things that business and society and as individuals we can also need to do. If we say no, business will change. Now, how powerful are we as individual self? Can the collective effort bring an impact? And we have seen that. We have seen that in people now denying to use plastics or being conscious of the fact that don't use straws, blah, blah, blah. And there's a certain behavioral shift in the businesses. How far can we push that?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, pada saya, bagaimana kita nak mula? For me lah, kita kena look at the youngs, look at the belia youth. Because semua orang tahu masa depan negara, kita nak lihat masa depan negara ni, kita kena lihat pada belia sekarang. So kalau belia sekarang ni bagus, is good enough, then dia akan jadi negara yang baik sebab mereka akan menjadi pemimpin negara yang akan datang. So where to start? Go to the youth first. And dan kena semua tahu apa youth ni ada. What youth have? Money they don't have, but they have spirit, they have kekuatan, tenaga,
energy,
Yes, then saya nak urge everybody dalam ni supaya this SDG agenda must include bersama youth also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it.
So the agenda must include the youth, because the youth, even though they don't have money, but they have something more important. They have the spirit and they have the energy, which we, kind of like, we have energy, but not as much as the youth, right? I mean, nobody can deny that. Thank you. And so I'm going to end with Dr. Zainal, who will tell us what is his motivation or his purpose, and then sum up the whole of today, his 2 hours in 5 minutes, right? Thank you.
Darren, I'm trying to challenge you in 9 hours too. But, okay, to start with the purpose, I think interesting reflection is that Darren and I think architect Dato, that they somehow, they see that when they go for study, like you did banking and then you end up being
I'm only SPM student. I hanya belajar sampai SPM saja, sampai STPM saja. Lepas tu I pergi bank, I dari kerja bertengkus lumus. I work hard and I rank in rows until I become an auditor. Then I left the auditor. I tak ada graduate degree, tak ada.
That's even more interesting, because what we can see now is that the whole purpose of education is somehow being questioned so much now. Like, imagine if what Nizam is saying, that imagine if all the graduates, if all the students are being exposed during the 3-4 years periods to really do this thing, then we don't have to suffer with all the problem, because they get used to it, they got the skills, they got the values to do that. So I mean, that's first thing. But I have to go back to your question, purpose. If you talking about ambition, I was looking forward to be ambassador. That's why I take political science. And then my father asked me whether he wanted me to be a politician, because the same argument that we thought a politician can change. Then I realized the science politics changed the perception in total. Politician, okay, all right, I shouldn't. All right. Enough said, yeah. All right, let me try to somehow give common takeaway for us to reflect what we talk about. Yeah, I try my best. Well, JP has done that job very well. To me, when we talk about localizing, I think the very strong message from sustainable development, where it's attached to it, is how we localize the agenda. But I think one of our fundamental error is that how truly and honest we are in localizing and upgrading and really highlight the local practice, values, and etc. to be the agenda, to be the framework. Because sometimes we see what's given from outside and what's in the 17 goals and with the target and indicators are the determinants. But actually we have been living sustainably with our own values and gotong royong, what Hamdan was saying. So all these things there from the very beginning. So for that reason, I guess I will somehow try to be a bit provocative by looking at the topic. I thought that it should be localizing the leaders instead of localizing because I think what Dato' was saying is that I do admit to that. I mean, politicians are, okay, yeah. We need to really localize them, because I think this is where we got it not that right, or we got it very wrong, because I think we've been to many constituencies, Omna, yeah, I think like 6-7 constituencies. What we see is that, yeah, there are still very good politicians, but some of them, I think they just take politicians for the power. Yeah, and we really go to the ground as to how Omna was showing the picture. We went to that level, because to me, I see two hopes. One is in educations, and two, then to politicians. Yeah, but now when we go down, I think my hopes now is in strengthening the local leaders. I mean, the district office, the villages. These are the real people that really understand. Because at I think one of the discussion that I attended, there's one minister on politicians in a way, yeah, who said the SDG is not having good political mileage before, but now he is all out for this. So I feel like, okay, there are good one, and he's really, I mean, we talk very closely now, and maybe Omna can imagine who is that, yeah. But this is what happened means that we cannot really lose hope, but still, there's a lot of things need to be worked on. The other thing that I would like to somehow, I think, we have a lot of many elephants in the room that we've been talking about. So this thing is nothing new, yeah? The development, the change in unsustainable development, etc. But I guess my few last message is that if only that we can really try, because what I learned is from when we really go to the ground, unless and until you really bring the four stakeholders together, so you can put aside politics, interest, get represented, the NGOs, the community, the university people, yeah, and then the business people, the CSR kind of activities, if they are interested in, and the government agencies. So, because what we saw is that sometimes they don't have the informations. Once they get information, they can do it. And sometimes you lack of manpower, like what ADAP is doing. But if only you bring people like university, then you get the students to help you. So what we see now is that these are the things that really have to take place on the ground.
SDG 17.
Exactly.
Partnerships.
Yeah. And that's what they've been doing. Meaning that when if I can go back to the things that I was saying, the practice, gotong royong is exactly the spirit. Yeah. We've got to bring everybody in. So in that note, I think the other thing that I would like to somehow highlight as well is that when we want to promote this argument, there must be some local narrative that we want to sell around. Yeah. Purpose. If in Japan there's a specific this term referred to ikigai. Yeah. And then you have in Korea nunchi, and you have in Swedish, I think they call it lagom. Yeah, and then hige in Finland. So these are the kind of concepts that really shape the sustainable lifestyle. And we have our own. We've got our own sejahtera concept, a bit of promotion to my center. Yeah, but this is the kind of concept, and we have Terengganu, who's been talking about gagasan sejahtera. So concept of sejahtera is there. For me, I mean, at the university too, the concept of, promoting, going back to our own basic, we use the word sejahtera. Because these are very familiar words, and we even say salam sejahtera. So now it's time for us to really translate whatever that we talk about into action using our own framework. My last words would be that totally agree, at the end of the day, it's our single little action that we can do. Either we take as our leaders or not, but we ourselves. Yeah? And really last one is education. That's why I take all the blame. If, at the end of the day, it goes back to education, but sometimes our educational leaders are not brave enough. I would give an example, maybe I will leave with this, that, like you say, Japin, is that some of the indicators, measurement doesn't really reflect what's reality on the ground. And this is exactly what's happening in universities as well. The ranking is measuring something which is not the purpose of university. And yet we still succumb to this one. So now what we talk about is, instead of talking about this kind of indicators, yes, we try our best, but what is more important is beyond the indicators. So for that reason, I guess, at the end of the day, let's change our education system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think we've also forgotten a very important leader, that is father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, community leaders, penghulus, yeah, tok penghulus, kampong leaders. Those are grassroots leaders that are so important. You know, I was so inspired by Omna's story about, the Baha'i community. So I would like to end this by giving a huge thank you and gratitude for Darren, for Dr. Izumi, for Hamdan, for Omna, for Nizam, and for Dr. Zainal. Can you give them a big hand applause? And so with that, we end this session of localizing SDGs and also building leaders. I'd just like to leave you with one word, which is ahimsa, which is do no harm. And as we're doing no harm, let's not leave anyone or anything that lives in the planet behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Japeng. Before we end, let's have a photo group. And we are going to have a closing session, this ceremony, 2 p.m. I hope everybody will stay until closing ceremony, because we're going to have this session to highlight during the closing ceremony. Because I hope everyone agree to, we appoint Darren to deliver It's very small what is happening here, the outcome from discussion. Yeah. Okay. Before the ceremony, closing ceremony, actually the one last session, 11:30 is a partnership on SDG. If anyone interested, is going to be 11:30 at the auditorium.